Lisa sat in the transport shuttle as it moved through the darkness of space, watching the distant glow of Valorian Station grow larger with each passing moment. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gripped the armrest and she tried to control her breathing. The other passengers on the shuttle were all elves, tall and graceful creatures with skin that seemed to catch light from sources that did not exist. They barely acknowledged her presence, which was exactly what Lisa had expected. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, and most alien species viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and pity. The journey had taken 3 weeks from Earth, and Lisa had spent most of that time reading everything she could about Valorian Academy. The statistics were not encouraging. In the past 100 years, only 43 humans had attempted to study at the Academy. Of those, only 6 had completed the first year. The others had quit, been injured severely, or in 3 cases had died during training exercises. Lisa knew all of this when she volunteered. She knew the risks, understood the dangers, and accepted them anyway because she wanted to prove that humans were more than just primitive creatures struggling on their home planet. The Galactic Council had specifically chosen her from thousands of applicants. She had excelled in combat training, scored perfectly on all tactical simulations, and showed an unusual ability to adapt to new situations. But the council representative who interviewed her had warned her about one thing. The elves did not believe in mercy. They did not adjust their training methods for weaker species. If Lisa could not keep up with her elf peers, she would fail, and she would have to accept that failure with grace. The shuttle descended through the upper atmosphere of Valorian Prime, a planet that orbited a binary star system. The light from both suns gave the world a perpetual golden glow, and vast crystal formations jutted from the ground like monuments to some ancient civilization. The Academy itself appeared suddenly as the shuttle broke through the clouds, a sprawling complex of interconnected towers and training grounds that seemed to have grown from the planet's surface, rather than been built upon it. Lisa's heart began to race as the shuttle touched down and the airlock hissed open. She grabbed her single bag containing everything she had brought with her, and stepped out onto the landing platform. The gravity here was slightly higher than Earth's, and Lisa felt the added weight immediately. Around her, elf students moved with natural grace, their long limbs carrying them effortlessly across the platform. Lisa forced herself to walk forward, knowing that hesitation would mark her as weak. A tall elf woman with silver hair and eyes that burned like molten gold approached Lisa. Her name was Instructor Thalia, and she would be Lisa's guide through the first week of orientation. Thalia's expression was neutral, neither welcoming nor hostile. She simply gestured for Lisa to follow and began walking toward the Academy entrance. As they walked, Thalia explained the basic rules of the Academy. Students were expected to maintain physical fitness at all times. Combat training occurred every day, with the intensity increasing weekly. Academic studies in strategy, history, and interstellar diplomacy filled the mornings. Physical training dominated the afternoons. Evenings were designated for personal study and preparation. There were no exceptions to this schedule, and no excuses were accepted for failure to meet expectations. Lisa listened carefully, knowing that every word Thalia spoke was important. Her dormitory assignment surprised her. Instead of the large communal barracks where most first-year students lived, Lisa was given a small private room in a residential tower. Thalia explained that human physiology required different environmental conditions than elf biology. The air in the private quarters was adjusted to be more similar to Earth's atmosphere. The lighting was modified to match Earth's sun. The temperature was kept slightly cooler than the Academy standard. On the surface, these accommodations seemed thoughtful, but Lisa understood the real reason behind them. The Academy administration did not want her weakness affecting the training of their elite elf students. She was being isolated, separated from the community, given just enough support to survive but not enough to truly belong. That first night, Lisa sat alone in her room and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like a physical force. She thought about her family back on Earth, about her friends who had told her she was crazy to attempt this. She thought about the 6 humans who had succeeded before her, and the 37 who had failed. Then she stood up, changed into training clothes, and headed to the Academy's exercise facilities. If she was going to survive this place, she needed to start immediately. The facilities were nearly empty at this late hour, with only a few elf students using the equipment. Lisa chose a treadmill and began running, pushing herself harder than she had in the training simulations. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she forced herself to continue. She was going to prove that a human belonged here. She was going to earn the respect of her peers through dedication and hard work. 3 days later, Lisa received her assignment to the Dragon Training Program. This was unexpected. Most first-year students did not receive Dragon Companions until their second year. But apparently the Academy administration had decided that if Lisa was going to stand any chance of succeeding, she needed an edge. The Dragon training grounds were located in a separate section of the Academy complex, far from the main buildings. As Lisa approached the facility, she heard the sound of dragon calls echoing across the open space. The creatures she saw were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Some were enormous, their scales gleaming in the light of the twin suns. Others were smaller but moved with dangerous grace and intelligence. A dragon keeper named Marcus, who was himself a hybrid of human and something else that Lisa could not quite identify, led her to a holding pen containing a single dragon. The creature was smaller than most of the others, no more than 15 feet long, with scales the color of deep purple amethyst. The dragon had eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies, and when those eyes fixed on Lisa, she felt something shift inside her chest. Marcus explained that this dragon, named Zephyr, had rejected 4 previous handlers. The dragon was intelligent, stubborn, and refused to obey traditional commands. Most dragon keepers believed that Zephyr was unsuitable for academy training and should be retired to the breeding grounds. But Marcus saw something different in the dragon. He saw potential. He believed that Zephyr needed a handler who would respect her intelligence, rather than simply trying to dominate her. That was why he had requested that Lisa be assigned to her. Lisa felt the weight of this responsibility settle on her shoulders. She approached Zephyr slowly, keeping her movements calm and deliberate. The dragon watched her with an expression that seemed almost amused. Lisa raised her hand not to touch the dragon, but to simply show her peaceful intentions. To Lisa's surprise, Zephyr extended her neck and pressed her scaled head against Lisa's palm. The contact sent electricity through Lisa's entire being. It felt like recognition, like a moment of connection that transcended species and language. Over the next week, Lisa spent every free moment with Zephyr. She learned the dragon's preferences and personality. Zephyr enjoyed flying at dawn and dusk, when the light from the twin suns created spectacular colors across the sky. The dragon liked to bathe in the cold springs located at the edge of the training grounds. Zephyr was intelligent enough to understand complex tactical discussions and seemed to enjoy being included in Lisa's planning sessions. Other students began to notice the bond forming between them. Some were amazed. Others were skeptical, believing that Lisa was somehow cheating or that Zephyr was simply not as difficult as rumors suggested. But when Lisa and Zephyr entered their first official combat trial, doubt turned to shock. The match was against 3 elf students and their much larger dragon companions. The elves were overconfident, barely bothering to acknowledge Lisa and her smaller dragon as actual threats. When the match began, everything changed. Lisa did not try to use strength or size to win. Instead, she used her unique ability to see problems from unexpected angles. She had spent the past week studying how Zephyr moved, learning to predict her dragon's actions before they happened. When the opposing dragons attacked, Zephyr was already moving out of the way. When the elf handlers tried to execute complex maneuvers, Lisa anticipated their strategy and countered it with something completely unexpected. Within minutes, the match was over. Lisa and Zephyr had won decisively, and the academy fell silent in shock. As Lisa walked back to her dormitory that night, she felt something fundamental shift within her. She was no longer the fragile human who did not belong. She was Lisa, the girl with the impossible dragon, and she had just proven that she could succeed in this place. The whispers that had followed her through the academy corridors began to change. Where students had once watched her with pity, they now watched with interest. Instructors began asking her advice on tactical problems. Her private quarters felt less like isolation and more like sanctuary. Lisa understood that her real challenges had only just begun. Surviving the first trial was one thing. Surviving an entire year of training at this elite academy. The morning alarm chimed at dawn and Lisa's eyes opened immediately. She had trained herself to wake without the grogginess that usually plagued humans in the morning. The twin suns were just beginning to rise above the crystal formations outside her window, casting the world in shades of orange and gold. Lisa dressed quickly in her academy training uniform, a sleek black and silver suit designed to enhance physical performance and provide basic environmental protection. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the determined person staring back at her. The Academy's physical conditioning program had already begun to change her body. She was leaner now, more muscular, but the real changes were happening inside. Her confidence was growing with each passing day. Breakfast was served in the main dining hall, a vast chamber where hundreds of elf students gathered before their morning classes. Lisa found a small table in the corner where she usually sat alone. This morning, however, a shadow fell across her table. An elf student with striking features and brilliant blue eyes stood looking down at her. The student's name was Valerie, and she was the Academy's top fighter according to all the rankings Lisa had studied before arriving. Valerie was known for her ruthless tactics and her complete dominance in every combat scenario she entered. The entire dining hall went quiet as Valerie pulled out a chair and sat down across from Lisa. Nobody sat with the human girl. It was an unspoken rule that had existed since Lisa's arrival. Breaking that rule was shocking enough to warrant the attention of everyone present. Valerie did not smile or engage in pleasantries. She simply studied Lisa with the intensity of someone evaluating a tactical problem. After a long moment of silence, she spoke in a voice that carried only to Lisa's ears. She said that she had observed Lisa's victory in the dragon trial, and she wanted to understand how a human had managed to defeat 3 of the Academy's most elite elf warriors. Valerie admitted that she was skeptical of the official story that Lisa and her dragon were simply naturally bonded. There had to be something else, some technique or strategy that Lisa was employing. She wanted Lisa to explain the truth. Lisa considered her response carefully. She realized that honesty was the only way to proceed. She explained that she had not used any tricks or hidden techniques. She had simply studied her dragon's movements and preferences. She had learned to understand Zephyr as an individual, rather than as a tool to be commanded. She had adapted her own fighting style to match her dragon's strengths rather than trying to force her dragon to match a predetermined strategy. Valerie listened without interruption, and when Lisa finished, the elf warrior nodded slowly. Valerie said that she understood now, and that the approach Lisa described was both revolutionary and dangerously underestimated by most military strategists. Valerie went on to explain her own fighting philosophy. She had achieved her ranking through perfect execution of classical techniques and through exhaustive study of every possible combat scenario. But she admitted that there was something lacking in her approach. Her victories were predictable because she always relied on the same patterns of attack and defense. An opponent who studied her long enough could anticipate her every move. Lisa had just demonstrated a strategy that could not be easily anticipated because it relied on adaptation and flexibility rather than predetermined forms. Over the following days, Valerie and Lisa began spending time together outside of official training sessions. They trained together in the practice arenas, with Valerie's massive dragon and Lisa's smaller but more agile Zephyr, creating an interesting dynamic. Valerie's dragon was named Inferno, a creature of raw power and size. When Inferno and Zephyr sparred together, it was like watching a clash between physical force and strategic intelligence. Lisa found that training alongside Valerie helped her improve dramatically. She learned techniques that had been perfected over centuries of elf military tradition. In return, she shared with Valerie the principles of adaptive strategy that had served her so well. The first major examination of the semester came without warning. The Academy administration announced that all first-year students would be participating in a large-scale combat simulation designed to test their knowledge of group tactics and individual skill. The simulation would take place in a specialized arena that could project holographic opponents and obstacles based on real-world combat scenarios. Students would be divided into teams of 4, and each team would have to complete a series of objectives while facing increasingly difficult challenges. Lisa was assigned to a team with Valerie, an elf student named Helena, and another human named Marcus who had been studying at the academy for 2 years. Marcus was shocked to discover that there was another human present. Most of the human students at the academy tried to hide this fact, feeling ashamed of their species' weaker physiology. But Marcus quickly realized that Lisa was different. She did not apologize for being human, and she did not try to overcompensate by adopting elf mannerisms or fighting styles. The team spent several days preparing for the examination. They developed complex strategies and practiced coordinating their dragons in formation. Lisa suggested that they should assign different roles to each team member based on individual strengths, rather than trying to make everyone perform similar functions. Valerie would be their primary offensive force, using Inferno's raw power to break through enemy defenses. Helena, who had exceptional precision and accuracy, would serve as their tactical sniper, taking down distant targets and high-priority threats. Marcus would be their defensive specialist, protecting the team from flanking attacks and managing crowd control. Lisa would serve as the coordinator and strategist, adapting their tactics in real time based on how the simulation scenarios evolved. When the examination day arrived, Lisa felt nervous but prepared. The simulation chamber was a vast space where holographic environments could be created instantly. The first scenario was relatively simple. A group of hostile forces was approaching a strategic location that the team needed to defend. The team had to eliminate all threats while minimizing damage to the facility they were protecting. Lisa quickly realized that the simulation was generating an endless stream of opponents. This was not meant to be a battle they could win through superior firepower. Instead, they needed to manage the situation. Holding their position long enough for a rescue team to arrive, Lisa called out orders, directing Valerie to establish a defensive perimeter with Inferno, while Helena and Marcus set up firing positions. She positioned Zephyr to move rapidly between threatened areas, responding to emergencies as they developed. The strategy worked perfectly. The team successfully held the location for the required time, and the simulation ended with a victory notification. But the examination was not finished. The holographic environment shifted instantly, and they found themselves in a completely different scenario. Now they were part of an assault force attempting to breach enemy fortifications. This required a completely different tactical approach. Lisa adapted their strategy on the fly, and the team executed flawlessly once again. By the time the examination concluded, Lisa's team had completed all 7 scenarios without a single failure. They had achieved what most teams considered impossible. When the results were announced, Lisa and her team ranked in the top 5% of all Academy teams. The announcement sent shockwaves through the Academy. A team including a human girl and a relatively new human student had outperformed teams that had been together for years and consisted entirely of purebred elf warriors. The achievement was discussed in every corridor, every training ground, every classroom. That evening, Lisa received a summons to the office of Headmistress Kaylin, the woman who ran Valorian Academy and who had authority over all training programs. Lisa's heart raced as she walked through the ornate corridors toward the administrative tower. She had no idea what she might have done wrong, but being summoned by the headmistress seemed like it could only be a negative development. When she entered the office, she found not just Headmistress Kaylin but also several other senior instructors waiting for her. Headmistress Kaylin was an ancient elf, her hair white as snow, her eyes containing the wisdom of centuries. She studied Lisa for a long moment before speaking. The headmistress said that Lisa had accomplished something extraordinary in her short time at the academy. The human girl had not only survived, she had excelled. More importantly, she had changed how the academy approached strategic thinking. Her success with Zephyr and her innovations in tactical planning were challenging fundamental assumptions about how military training should be conducted. Headmistress Kaylin went on to explain that the academy would be making a significant change to Lisa's training program. Instead of remaining in the standard first-year curriculum, Lisa would be advancing to the advanced combat scenarios used by third-year students. This was an extraordinary honor, but it was also an enormous challenge. Lisa accepted without hesitation, knowing that this was exactly what she needed to truly prove herself in this environment. As she walked back to her dormitory that night, Lisa felt the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. She was no longer just the human girl trying to survive. The advanced training facility was located in a restricted section of the academy that Lisa had never seen before. The grounds were more expansive than the regular training areas, with multiple combat arenas, simulation chambers, and tactical planning rooms. There were fewer than 50 students training at this level, and they were considered the elite of the elite. When Lisa first walked into the facility, conversation stopped and every head turned toward her. She could hear the unspoken questions in the silence. How could a human be advanced to this level after only a few weeks of training? What made her special enough to skip 2 entire years of standard curriculum? An instructor named Kale approached Lisa and introduced himself as her new combat coordinator. Kale was not a pure elf like most of the other instructors. His features suggested mixed heritage, and there was something in his eyes that suggested he understood what it felt like to be different. He explained that Lisa would be starting a completely new training program designed to push her to absolute limits. The Academy wanted to determine if humans could truly compete at the highest levels of military training, or if there were fundamental biological limitations that could not be overcome. The physical conditioning program was brutal. Every morning began with a 5-mile run across terrain, deliberately designed to be as challenging as possible. The ground was uneven, filled with obstacles and barriers that required constant adaptation. Lisa found herself struggling to keep pace with the other advanced students, who seemed to move effortlessly across the landscape. By the end of the first week, she was exhausted beyond anything she had experienced in her previous training. Her muscles ached constantly, her joints felt loose and unstable, and she wondered if her body was reaching its breaking point, but she refused to quit. Every night she would return to her dormitory, soak in the therapeutic pools available to advanced students, and prepare herself to wake up and do it all over again the next morning. Zephyr seemed to sense Lisa's exhaustion and stress. The dragon would position herself in Lisa's private quarters without being invited, and her mere presence seemed to provide comfort. Lisa would lie her head against Zephyr's scales and feel the gentle vibration of the dragon's breathing. There was something deeply calming about being near her dragon companion. It was as if Zephyr's calm strength flowed into Lisa, giving her the energy to continue pushing forward. By the second week of advanced training, Lisa began to see results. Her endurance was improving dramatically. She was able to complete the morning run without feeling completely destroyed. Her combat accuracy was increasing. She was learning to read her opponent's movements more quickly and to respond with greater efficiency. The other advanced students were beginning to treat her with genuine respect rather than skeptical tolerance. Some of them began asking her for advice on specific tactical problems. Others wanted to train alongside her because they had discovered that fighting Lisa made them better warriors. Valerie and Lisa continued their friendship, which surprised many people at the Academy. Valerie was from one of the oldest and most respected elf families, with a lineage that stretched back thousands of years. Social conventions suggested that she should have nothing to do with a human girl, but Valerie had never been one to follow social conventions, and she found in Lisa a kindred spirit who challenged her in ways that nothing else could. Together they began developing new training methods that combined elf military tradition with the adaptive strategies that Lisa had pioneered. They called this new approach synthesis combat, and they began teaching it to other advanced students. The method focused on maintaining the core strengths of classical elf techniques while incorporating the flexibility and innovation that humans seemed naturally inclined toward. One afternoon, Lisa received an unexpected visit from Marcus, the human student who had trained with her during the examination. Marcus brought news that shocked her. He had been offered a diplomatic position with the Galactic Council, a prestigious posting that would normally require years of additional training and experience. But his success in the Academy examination had accelerated his career trajectory dramatically. He was leaving Valorian Academy to take up his new duties, but before he left, he wanted to thank Lisa. He said that having another human at the Academy had changed his entire perspective on what was possible. Knowing that Lisa was here, pushing herself to excel despite the incredible obstacles, had given him the courage to do things he never would have attempted on his own. Lisa was genuinely happy for her fellow human, but his departure also marked a shift in her understanding of her situation. She realized that her success here was not just about personal achievement. It was about opening doors for future humans who would come to study at the Academy. The next major challenge came in the form of the Advanced Combat Tournament. This was an annual event where the 50 most elite students at Valorian Academy competed against each other in a series of elimination matches. The winner received numerous honors and was typically fast-tracked into the highest echelons of the galactic military establishment. Lisa received an invitation to participate, which was unusual because she was technically still in her first year of study. But her advancement to the advanced training program made her eligible, and the academy leadership wanted to see if she could truly compete at this level. The tournament began with preliminary matches that would reduce the field from 50 competitors to 16. Lisa's first opponent was an elf warrior named Kestra, who had been training at the advanced level for 3 years. Kestra was skilled, disciplined, and confident in a way that suggested she had never faced a serious challenge in her life. When the match began, Kestra attacked immediately with powerful, precise strikes designed to overwhelm her opponent quickly. Lisa did not try to match Kestra's strength. Instead, she focused on evasion and defense, studying how Kestra moved and where her attacks came from. After several minutes of dodging and blocking, Lisa identified Kestra's pattern. Every third attack, Kestra left her left side exposed for a fraction of a second. Lisa waited for that moment and struck, landing a decisive blow that sent Kestra staggering backward. From that point forward, Kestra could not recover. Lisa had taken her down and Kestra was forced to yield. The victory sent shockwaves through the tournament arena. An elf warrior who had been studying advanced combat for 3 years had just been defeated by a human in her first year. The crowd reacted with a mixture of amazement and disbelief. Lisa tried not to let the attention affect her concentration. She knew that her next matches would only be more difficult. Over the following days, Lisa continued to advance through the tournament brackets. Each match taught her something new. Each opponent forced her to adapt and innovate in different ways. She fought a warrior who specialized in close-quarters combat and learned to use the dragon's aerial advantage to maintain distance. She faced an opponent whose dragon was extraordinarily large and powerful, and she developed tactics that exploited Zephyr's superior agility and speed. With each victory, Lisa's reputation grew. The whispers that had once questioned her presence at the academy transformed into genuine discussions about what humans might be capable of if given proper training and opportunity. Valerie also continued her own undefeated streak through the tournament. It seemed inevitable that if both Lisa and Valerie continued to advance, they would eventually face each other in the final match. This thought complicated their friendship. They did not discuss it directly, but both of them felt the weight of the possibility hanging over them. Valerie was the Academy's champion, undefeated in tournament play. Lisa was the human girl who had risen impossibly high in an impossibly short time. If they met in the finals, one of them would have to lose. That loss would have implications far beyond just a tournament victory. As Lisa entered the semi-final rounds, she tried to focus on her next opponent rather than worrying about what might come after. But she could not help thinking about what a confrontation with Valerie would mean, both for their friendship and for what it would represent to the entire academy. Would a victory over Valerie establish humans as equals to elves? Would a loss prove that there were limits to human potential that could not be overcome? The pressure was enormous, but Lisa forced herself to remain calm. She had come to this academy to prove something about human capability. She had climbed further than anyone had expected. Now she would see exactly how far she could go. The semi-final match arrived on a clear afternoon when both suns hung high in the sky. Lisa's opponent was a fierce elf warrior named Solaria, renowned for her dragon's ability to breathe sustained streams of superheated plasma. The match took place in the arena designed specifically for testing high-level combat capabilities. The space was enormous, with multiple levels and various obstacles that could be raised or lowered during the battle to increase complexity. When Lisa entered the arena, the crowd rose to their feet. Thousands of academy students, instructors, and visitors had come to watch the semifinal matches. The human girl had become something of a celebrity within the academy, and people wanted to witness whether she could continue her unprecedented rise to the top. Solaria looked at Lisa with an expression that combined respect and determination. Solaria had studied footage of all of Lisa's previous matches, and she had developed a strategy designed specifically to counter Lisa's adaptive fighting style. Solaria believed that the key to victory was overwhelming speed and power, forcing Lisa to react so quickly that she could not analyze and adapt. When the match began, Solaria and her dragon attacked with ferocious intensity. The dragon released a burst of plasma that forced Lisa to dodge rapidly to the side. Zephyr responded by launching herself upward, gaining altitude to create distance between herself and Solaria's dragon. Lisa realized that Solaria's strategy was sound. By forcing rapid reactions, Solaria was preventing Lisa from establishing her typical pattern of observation and adaptation. Lisa needed to change her approach. Instead of trying to respond to Solaria's attacks, Lisa decided to dictate the pace of the battle. She called out commands to Zephyr that sent the smaller dragon into a series of aerial maneuvers designed to confuse and disorient. Zephyr performed loops and spirals, creating patterns that made it difficult for Solaria's much larger dragon to follow. While Solaria was focused on tracking Zephyr's movements, Lisa positioned herself to launch a series of precise attacks against the dragon handler herself. The key to winning in dragon combat, Lisa had learned, was not necessarily defeating the dragon. It was incapacitating the handler, or forcing them to make defensive choices that compromised their dragon's performance. Lisa sprinted forward with greater speed than Solaria had anticipated. The elf warrior tried to mount a defensive posture, but Lisa was already inside her guard. Lisa struck with controlled precision, hitting nerve clusters that would cause temporary numbness and pain without causing permanent injury. Solaria stumbled backward, giving Lisa the opening she needed. Zephyr dove from the sky, landing directly between Lisa and her opponent, forcing Solaria to retreat further. Seeing her handler in distress, Solaria's dragon attempted to come to her aid. But Zephyr was faster, cutting off the larger dragon's approach and forcing it to disengage. What had been a fierce, overwhelming attack transformed into a chaotic defensive struggle. Solaria found herself unable to coordinate effectively with her dragon, because she was too busy managing her own physical distress. Within minutes, Solaria was forced to yield the match. She had underestimated the human girl, believing that superior speed and power would be enough, but she had forgotten that intelligence and adaptation could outweigh raw physical advantages. As Lisa walked out of the arena, victorious but exhausted, she saw Valerie standing at the entrance to the competitors' area. Valerie had already won her semi-final match with impressive ease. She looked at Lisa with an expression of genuine warmth mixed with competitive intensity. Valerie extended her hand and Lisa clasped it. In that gesture was all of the friendship they had developed, and also the acknowledgement that they would soon face each other as opponents in the tournament final. Neither of them said anything, but both understood the weight of what was about to happen. The day of the final tournament match arrived with great ceremony. The entire academy gathered in the massive central arena, which had been specially prepared for the occasion. Headmistress Kaylin herself would be presiding over the match. Banners hung from the arena walls displaying the symbols of both Lisa and Valerie. The crowd was enormous, with not just academy personnel, but also representatives from the planetary, government, and even visitors from other star systems, who had come to witness what was being called the most significant match in recent academy history. A human girl against an elf champion, tradition against innovation, the old ways against new possibilities. Everything about this match mattered in ways that extended far beyond just determining a tournament winner. As Lisa walked into the arena, the crowd erupted in sound. She had become genuinely beloved by many at the academy. Her courage and determination had inspired people across the galaxy who had believed that humans were incapable of competing with the elder species. Valerie entered from the opposite side, and the crowd responded with equal enthusiasm. Valerie was the Academy's best warrior, and she represented the pinnacle of elf martial excellence. This was not a match between enemies. This was a match between two warriors who respected each other deeply, but were about to engage in mortal combat. When the match began, neither Lisa nor Valerie immediately attacked. Instead, they circled each other, studying, analyzing, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their dragons, Zephyr and Inferno, mirrored their handlers' movements, creating a complex dance of potential threats and defensive positioning. Lisa knew that she could not defeat Valerie through superior physical strength or size. Valerie was simply too skilled and too powerful. What Lisa could do was maintain her advantage in tactical flexibility. She needed to force Valerie into situations where the elf champion's classical training would become a liability rather than an asset. The battle progressed with incredible speed and precision. Both warriors moved as if they had practiced together for years, anticipating each other's moves, responding to threats before they fully materialized. Lisa struck high and Valerie blocked. Valerie attacked low and Lisa evaded. Their dragons clashed in the air above them, with Inferno's superior size matched against Zephyr's superior agility. It was a battle of equals, and the crowd watched in stunned silence. barely breathing as the two finest warriors at Valorian Academy pushed each other to their absolute limits. As the match continued, Lisa began to understand something profound about Valerie's fighting style. Valerie had perfected classical elf combat techniques to such a degree that she could execute them flawlessly in any scenario. But that perfection came with a cost. Valerie's moves, while executed brilliantly, followed patterns that Lisa was beginning to anticipate. Lisa started making small adjustments to her defense, positioning herself slightly differently than Valerie expected. She began moving fractionally earlier than Valerie's attacks were designed to counter, creating tiny openings that accumulated over time. Near the end of the match, with both warriors exhausted and pushing themselves beyond normal physical limits, Lisa saw the opportunity she had been waiting for. Valerie executed a complex three-strike combination, a beautiful display of martial artistry that was designed to defeat almost any conventional defense. But Lisa had been analyzing this exact combination throughout the entire match. She knew its weaknesses, knew the moment where Valerie's center of gravity would shift in a way that created vulnerability. As Valerie launched the third strike, Lisa ducked under it and swept Valerie's legs out from under her. Valerie fell, hitting the arena floor hard. For a moment, everything went silent. The crowd could not believe what they were seeing. Valerie, the Academy champion, had been defeated. She was struggling to rise, and Lisa was moving to press her advantage. But Lisa did not strike the finishing blow. Instead, she extended her hand to help Valerie up. Valerie looked at that extended hand for a moment, then clasped it firmly. Both warriors were breathing heavily. Both were exhausted beyond measure, but in that moment they were not victor and vanquished. They were two warriors who had pushed each other to excellence and had emerged better for the experience. The crowd erupted in absolute chaos. Half of them were celebrating Lisa's victory. Half were honoring Valerie's incredible performance. The moment seemed to stretch endlessly as Lisa stood in the center of the arena, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. She had done the impossible. She had won the Advanced Tournament Championship at Valorian Academy. She, a human girl from Earth, had defeated the elf civilization's finest warrior. Headmistress Kaylin descended into the arena and placed a ceremonial crown on Lisa's head, marking her as the tournament champion. But more importantly, Kaylin made an official announcement to the entire assembly. She declared that Lisa had proven beyond any reasonable doubt that humans were fully capable of competing with elf warriors at the highest levels of combat and strategy. The Galactic Council would be receiving a full report of Lisa's achievements, and there would likely be significant changes to how human recruitment and training programs were conducted throughout the galaxy. The human girl had not just won a tournament. She had changed the future of human civilization among the stars.